Chapter 2, The Dimension of Sign. Part 1, Language of the Body and the Reality of the Sign. The Marital Promise. General Audience number 103 of January 5th, 1983. I take you as my wife. I take you as my husband. These words stand at the center of the liturgy of marriage as a sacrament of the Church. The engaged couple speak these words, inserting them in the following formula of consent. Quote, I promise to be faithful to you always, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, and to love and honor you all the days of my life. With these words, the engaged couple contract marriage, and at the same time they receive it as a sacrament of which both are the ministers. Both, the man and the woman, administer the sacrament. They do so before witnesses. The authorized witness is the priest, who at the same time blesses the marriage and presides over the whole liturgy of the sacrament. Further witnesses are, in a certain sense, all the participants in the wedding rite, and in an official way, some of them, usually two, who are specifically called as witnesses. They must witness that the marriage is contracted before God and confirmed by the Church. In the normal course of events, sacramental marriage is a public act before society and the Church by which two persons, a man and a woman, become husband and wife. That is, the actual subject of the married vocation and life. Marriage as a sacrament is contracted by means of the Word, which is a sacramental sign in virtue of its content. Quote, I take you as my wife, as my husband, and I promise to be faithful to you always, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, and to love you and honor you all the days of my life. However, this sacramental word is, of itself, only a sign of the coming to be of marriage. And the coming to be of marriage is distinct from its consummation, so much so that without this consummation, marriage is not yet constituted in its full reality. The observation that a marriage is juridically contracted but not consummated, ratum non consummatum, corresponds to the observation that it has not been fully constituted as a marriage. In fact, the words themselves, quote, I take you as my wife, as my husband, do not only refer to a determinate reality, but they can only be fulfilled by the copulo conjugale, conjugal intercourse. This reality, the copula conjugale, moreover, has been defined from the very beginning by institution of the Creator. Quote, a man will leave his father and his mother and unite with his wife, and the two will be one flesh. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Thus, from the words with which the man and the woman express their readiness to become one flesh, according to the eternal truth established in the mystery of creation, we pass to the reality that corresponds to these words. Both the one and the other element are important with regard to the structure of the sacramental sign, to which we should devote what follows in the present considerations. Given that the sacrament is the sign by means of which the saving reality of grace and the covenant is expressed and realized, we must now consider it under the aspect of sign, while the preceding reflections were devoted to the reality of grace and the covenant. As a sacrament of the Church, marriage is contracted by the words of the ministers, that is, of the new spouses, words that signify and indicate in the intentional order what, or rather who, both have decided to be from now on, for and with one another. The words of new spouses are part of the integral structure of the sacramental sign, not only by what they signify, but also in some sense with what they signify and determine. The sacramental sign is constituted in the intentional order inasmuch as it is simultaneously constituted in the real order. Consequently, the sign of the sacrament of marriage is constituted by the words of the new spouses, inasmuch as the reality that they themselves constitute corresponds to them. Both of them, as man and woman, being ministers of the sacrament at the moment of contracting marriage, at the same time constitute the full and real visible sign of the sacrament itself. The words spoken by them would not of themselves constitute the sacramental sign if the human subjectivity of the engaged man and woman, and at the same time the consciousness of the body linked with the masculinity and the femininity of the bride and the bridegroom, did not correspond to them. Here one must call to mind again the whole series of analyses of Genesis chapters 1 and 2 carried out earlier. The structure of the sacramental sign remains, in fact, in its essence, the same as in the beginning. What determines it is, in some sense, the language of the body, inasmuch as the man and the woman, who are to become one flesh by marriage, express in this sign the reciprocal gift of masculinity and femininity as the foundation of the conjugal union of the persons. The sign of the sacrament of marriage is constituted by the fact that the words spoken by the new spouses take up again the same language of the body as at the beginning, and at any rate give it a concrete and unrepeatable expression. They give it an intentional expression on the level of consciousness and will, of heart and conscience. The words, quote, "I take you as my wife, as my husband," bear within themselves precisely that perennial and ever unique and unrepeatable language of the body, and they place it at the same time in the context of the communion of persons. "I promise to be faithful to you always, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, and to love you and honor you all the days of my life." In this way, the perennial and ever-new language of the body is not only the substratum, but in some sense also the constitutive content of the communion of persons. The persons, the man and the woman, become a reciprocal gift for each other. They become this gift in their masculinity and femininity while they discover the spousal meaning of the body and refer it reciprocally to themselves in an irreversible way in the dimension of life as a whole. Thus, the sacrament of marriage as a sign allows one to understand the words of the new spouses, words that confer a new aspect on their life in the strictly personal and interpersonal, in communio personarum, dimension on the basis of the language of the body. The administration of the sacrament consists in this, that at the moment of contracting marriage, the man and the woman, with the suitable words and in rereading the perennial language of the body, form a sign, an unrepeatable sign, which also has a future-oriented meaning. All the days of my life, that is, until death. This is the visible and efficacious sign of the covenant with God in Christ, that is, of grace, which is to become their portion in this sign as their own gift, according to the expression of 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 7. If one formulates the question in socio-juridical terms, one can say that between the new spouses, a conjugal contract is stipulated that has a clearly determined content. One can say, in addition, that in consequence of this contract, they have become spouses in a socially recognized way, and that in this way the family as the fundamental social cell is constituted. This way of understanding it agrees obviously with the human reality of marriage, and indeed it is fundamental in the religious and religious moral sense. Yet from the point of view of the theology of the sacrament, the key for understanding marriage remains the reality of the sign with which marriage is constituted on the basis of man's covenant with God in Christ and in the Church. It is constituted in the supernatural order of the sacred bond requiring grace. In this order, marriage is a visible and efficacious sign. Having originated in the mystery of creation, it draws its new origin from the mystery of redemption in order to serve the union of the sons of God in truth and love. Gaudium et Spes 24:3. The liturgy of the sacrament of marriage gives a form to that sign, directly during the sacramental rite on the basis of the ensemble of its eloquent expressions, and indirectly throughout the whole of life. As spouses, the man and the woman bear this sign throughout the whole of their lives, and they remain this sign until death.